Good morning. So we're up to Siman Shin Samach Gimel Seif Yud Dalet. We're going through the halachos of Lechi, Korah, Mavui, etc. Says the Mechaba, Oidesh Hechsha Achel Mavui, Haparetz Berach Reviz. There is another way of fixing up a Mavui which is open on the fourth end, and that is Bekorah Sheyanichena Al Reish HaMavui. So till now we've said there are two ways of doing it. There's a lechi, we either have a lechi on one side or two thin lechis on both sides, or we have a tzuras HaPesach. But there is a third way, and that is you put a korah across the entrance of the mavui. So that's what the Mechaba means. There is another way to fix up the mavui which is open on the fourth wall. You put a beam across the top of the mavui, and you've got to put it on the walls of the mavui. So take a look at picture 43. You've got a picture there. You've got houses which lead onto a chotzer, and then one next door, and then you've got a mavui, and that mavui opens onto Rosh Hashanah. For you to carry in that mavui, you've got to be masak in it, and you put a korah across the top. But that korah needs to be on top of the two walls. That's what the Mechaba means. That it's got to be al kosle hamavui. But if you put two sort of nails or outside, or two pegs outside, so if you look at picture number 44, can you see that he's put pegs on the outside and he's resting the beam not on top of the walls but sort of horizontal to it? Then they're outside of the walls. That's no good. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Bekorah because this is like we've spoken about before. The reason why you have a lechi there is as a heka to remind you that you shouldn't carry B'Rishus Harabim Gemura. Well, this because the Mavi looks a bit like a Rishus Harabim, so therefore you need a reminder. And also will remind you not to carry from the Mavi outside into the Rishus Harabim. Al Reish HaMavi, you've got to put the korah on top of the kaisel, the two ksolim of the Mavi. Ratzalema b'ktsei HaMavi, at the end of the Mavi. If you put it halfway through, then we'll see that in Siflam base. It's very long simon. But if you put two pegs on the outside of the wall and you rested the korah on that, that's no good. Hainu. So that's picture 44. Yeah, you can see it's a bit hard to see, but you've got pegs in that beam. The korah is on the outside of the wall. Even if the pegs are very thin, they're very narrow, it's still very close to the walls, but and the reason is the korah al gabi ksolim boinen. Chazal instituted that to fix up a mavui, you've got to put the korah on top of the ksolim. She'ein niris shebo lahach she'amavui, because she'ein niris shebo lahach she'amavui, otherwise it won't be recognizable that you can't be machshe the mavui. And lechi, sorry, I've jumped the line. When is it recognizable that this korah is coming to fix the mavui? Only when it's in the airspace of the mavui. She'ein derech shum tikra v'shum korah l'sitz al gabi ksolim v'lo b'chutz. Because it's not normal to sort of just put beams on top of the walls over there. The dafka korah, and that is specifically the korah. But when do we say that it needs to be in the airspace in the halal of the mavui? That's dafka the korah, because otherwise it's not a heka. Masha'en kain, the lechi can be outside. Afilu chutz lechalal hamavi can even be on the outside of the halal. Like we spoke about previously. The time of the milson, the reason is simply this: the lechi afilu omed bachutz nika shebo lahach she'amavi. The lechi, which is standing outside the mavi, it's clear that you've put it there to fix the mavi. Masha'en kain bekorah, because there you need a heka, and therefore it's got to be inside the mavi. Okay, good. Possible, and if you put it on the outside, they put the korah on the outside of the mavi, it's no good. And if you put two pegs on the outside and you put the beam on top of it, kasha, not because of the korah, but mitam lechi, because of the two lechis, you've got the two pegs serve as a lechi, not because of the korah. Okay, so again, just to summarize your dalet, what have we said? that you've got a classic mavui as per the pictures, and Chazal made a gezerah that you can't carry in the mavui because you might confuse it with the Rosh Hashanah, or you might carry from the mavui into the Rosh Hashanah, and therefore there are various ways of fixing it up. Till now we've spoken about having a lechi, which means one upright on one side, or two very thin uprights on both sides, or having a tzuras HaPesach. Now we're saying there's a concept of Korah. You can put a Korah across, but the point is you've got to put it on top of the walls, not on the outside of the walls, connected to some sort of peg, which is sort of nailed into the wall. And that's the difference between 43 and 44 in the pictures. Okay, good. Says the Mechaber, Tes Vav. V'tzarich she'anichena kedei lahatzeh hamavui. You've got to place the Korah there in order to be matzah in the mavui. Avalim lo nasis l'shem kach. But if it wasn't placed there for that specific purpose, it would just, for example, you woke up Shabbos morning, you think, hey, there's a beam across the top of the mavui, that can serve as my Korah. That's not good enough. Even if you decide in Erev Shabbos that you're going to use it for that, it's not good enough. It's got to have been placed there for the designated purpose of being a Korah, to be machshir the mavui. Says the Mishnah Berurah, avalim lai ka'isa shenoisin Korah mikais l'kais l'chazek solem. For example, maybe you put the Korah there in order to strengthen the walls, to make them become firmer. That's not a good enough reason. It's got to be there in order for Eruvin purposes. Afilu samcha aleha v'chula. Afilu samcha aleha v'after belechi kaimel on b'sif Yud Aleph. Even though we said in Yud Aleph that im samcha alav mi erev Shabbos mahani, afilu ba'emed lo alav, we said with lechi that if you didn't put it there for that designated purpose, so long as you thought about it on Erev Shabbos, and I'm saying I'm doing it for that, that would be okay. But here we're saying afilu samcha, it's no good. What's the difference? So shani hasam de lechi mishum mechitza. The difference is simply this: that lechi is functioning as a mechitza, or mechitza emedes me'aleh gam kein mechav mechitza, a mechitza which is there not put for that designated purpose, but just happens to be there, is good. Avul Korah mishum heka. The whole function of a Korah is to make a heka, to make a little sign, a reminder for you. And if it wasn't placed for that reason, lo have a heka. It's not considered a heka. Even if it's very wide, it's no good. Okay, good. Fine. So the Korah is different to the lechi, that it's got to have been placed there for that purpose, because after all it's a heka and it's not there as a mechitza, and therefore if it was not placed there for that purpose, or even if you decide in Erev Shabbos to use it as that, it's not good enough. And I guess you got to actually take it off and put it back again, or be metalted it, it like we do with our schach sometimes. Okay, Teside. Korah zu shamarnu tzricha shir. Now the rule is that the Korah has a designated shir, and therefore, if the Korah is made out of wood from an asherah tree, psula, to given the streifa kaiva, since the halacha is you've got to burn the asherah wood, it's as if it's all been burnt already, and therefore you're lacking in the shear which is required for Korah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, tzricha shear, and what the shear is, we're going to see in the next sif. And therefore, hu adin l'chol davar shetzarich shear, and it's true with anything which requires a shear, that if it's made from asherah, it's no good. Kugoyin masher nizka le'el b'sif beis pas shel abot tfachim b'tzad echad. So for example, when you use not a lechi but you use pas, a board of abot tfachim b'tzad echad, or a tefach mikan or tefach mikan, and he says at the back in footnote number 48 that la halacha we don't say a tefach on either side. We say that lefi ma shechriya le'el the bi halacha sheb'shnei pasim ein tzarich she'er rechav tefach, then lechera you din a kelechi. Then it would be like a lechi shemosamat she'er is kasha. So whenever you don't need a shear, just a very thin strip is sufficient, then an asherah wood would not be a problem. When is it a problem? If there is a requirement for a shear. So therefore, the Korah, there's a requirement for a shear, as we'll see in Sif Zayin. And so too, the pas shel arba tfachim b'tzad echad on tefach mikan is a problem. However, says footnote 48 that according to the conclusion that you don't need a tefach mikan and tefach mikan, that it's sufficient to have a kolshu. So now then it has the same halacha as the lechi, that made out of atzah asherah would be okay, because we haven't got a problem of k'tutei mechtet shiurei. Okay, me'atzah asherah. Now what exactly is atzah asherah? Of the Yisrael, that Jewish person started worshipping this tree, she'ein lo bittel, and that it cannot be, you can't undo it. You can't be mevatel the avodah zarah. or even if it belonged to a non-Jewish person, and the Jewish person cut it, that also could make it Atzeh Asherah, to Ikotza Akum, because if the non-Jewish person cut it, that is a bittul of the Avodah Zarah. If he took it in order to acquire it, it now becomes Avodah Zarah of a Jewish person. And therefore you got to come on to the whole problem of Katut Mechtet Shirei. But if the Yisrael took it not to acquire it, it's still possible to mevatl it. We don't say that because it's not Omer Desarif, because he might be mevatl it. Okay, Yud Zayin. Now we're talking about the shear of the Korah. Shear HaKorah. Rechava tefach va'ovya kol shehu. So that beam which goes across the top of the mavui, which serves as your heka and allows you to carry the mavui, it's got to be one tefach thick, va'ovya kol shehu, one tefach wide, but the thickness can be even a very thin amount. So it's got to be one tefach wide, but however, even minimally thick. Rag, however, shetei chazok k'dei lekabel oreach. It's got to be wide. It's got to be strong enough to carry a brick. Shehi chatz levena, which is like a half brick in the times of Chazal. Shel shleisha tefachim, i.e., it's got to be 1.5 to be able to carry a brick of 1.5 tefachim. V'imay rechava arba'a tefachim. But if it's very wide, this Korah, i.e. it's 4 tefach wide, then we're not worried about the strength. It doesn't need to be strong enough to carry the Orach. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nunches, Rechav tefach, v'af shetzrich hashir lekabel olei Orach, she'rochav tefach l'mechza, even though it's got to be 1 tefach wide and it's got to be able to carry a brick which is 1.5 tefach, how's it going to do that? Not a problem. The way it works is you can balance. Imagine you've got a beam which is 1 tefach wide. You can balance a brick which is 1.5 tefach. Just put it centrally, i.e., you've got a quarter of a tefach hanging over on each side, and you can cement it in that it doesn't fall. Sif Kotten Nuntes, Lekabel Oreach, Rotzalem Arichaim, Shekol Echad Mehem Machzekes Ba'arka Shleisha Tfachim over Rechavei Tefach Umechsa, i.e., that it can carry a brick of 3 tefachim long and 1.5 tefach wide. So you've got that brick which is 3 tefach long and it's 1.5 wide, so it will be able to carry it. Okay, so when I said before it was 1.5, I meant in the width, not the length. Sheichim Oleh B'chol Arka K'shir Reichav Pesach Evi HaMavui. U'mikol Mokum. Im Hoyer Reichav Pesach HaMavu Ese Amos. Let's say you've got the opening of the Mavui is 10 Amos. You don't need to be able to carry the brick across the entire length of the opening of the mavu. It's sufficient if it's strong enough to carry it for 9 and 2 mashahus. 9 amas and 2 mashahus. What is that? 9 amas will equate to 18 arichaim. Because each brick is 3 tefach long, and an amma is 6 tefachim. So each amma has 2 bricks. So if you've got 9 ammas and a 2 mashahuyin, then you've got 18 bricks, right? Half is 3 times 3 tefachim times 18. Which gives you 9 amas. Well, because the bits on each side are going to be covered by lovad. Each side are within 3 tefachim of the edge, so therefore I've essentially got a good Korah which is going to be strong enough to carry the brick for the essential part, i.e. 9 amas plus 2 mashruin, because they're coming b'sif chav aleph. The reason why Chazal required the Korah to be able to carry an Ariach is she'im lo yikein lo yeh bo heka kolkach. Otherwise, it won't be a good enough heka. She'svurim b'nei Rabim she'lefi shah henichu sham. People will just think that I just placed the beam across there. Avol k'shibariya v'chazok lekabel binyan kazeh. But if the Korah which I put across is strong and to sustain something on top of it, that you're doing it for the benefit of the whole construction, and that will be a good heka. Good, Yudches. Ma'amidim dahainu, you've got supports. Dahainu, if you rest the beam on yesedas which come out of the kosa. Now he's got a picture of it. If you take a look at picture number 50, yeah, can you see it there? The first picture on the page. So you've got those little supports, and then you've got the beam resting on top of it. So you haven't got the beam, the Korah, which is directly on the wall, but they're resting on supports which are on top of each side of the Mavi wall. She'ein berach ben tefach, v'lo ba'arkon shalosh. The actual ma'amidin, the actual supports, do not have those dimensions. Some say they've got to be strong enough to be makabel, to support it, and to be makabel chatzi levena, half a brick. They just got to hold on to the beam. They've got to keep the beam in place, but they don't have to be strong enough to carry on a reach. That's the job of the Korah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, she'ein berach ben tevach di ilav hachi. Otherwise, the actual ma'amidim would have a din of a Korah. For gamlo haya ba'arkon shalish, they don't have to be 3 tfachim long. Kadesh eti hakora loved la koisa l'chumavua b'hakol b'sif chafei. You don't have to come on to loved. Well, lekabel chatze levena k'fi hamavua b'sif yizay, like we said in the previous sif. Ele kadei lekablo, i.e. to carry, to support the Korah. You don't actually put the brick on the ma'amid of a Korah in the kvias, but you just need a strong Korah to make sure it's a good heka. Avol ma'amideha, the supports for the Korah, lo tali haker b'didu. We're not using that as the heker, it's the Korah which is the heker, not the ma'amidin. That's Rashi's mahalach. That the ma'amid is strong enough not just for the Korah, but for the to carry a brick as well. Let's just do a couple more. We've got a few minutes. Let's just do Yutes and Chav. Im hoisa Korah agula. Now, if the Korah is round, so look at picture number 51. It's like a log. Yeah, your Korah is a round log. It must be there supported that it doesn't roll off, but it's agula. So what's the rule? It's got to have a diameter of 3 tfachim, because because that will make it have a diameter. Sorry, it's got to have a circumference of 3, because then it will have a diameter of 1 tefach, which is our requirement. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Korah agula. Va'afta hashta k'shi agula einat yichol lekabel oleh areach afil hachi k'sheira t'chashvin noiso ki'ilu hoisa mischalekes l'shnayim. Even though if you put a brick on top of it, it's not going to stay because it will just fall off because the thing's round. But we treat it conceptually as it's divided into 2, and therefore it suffices. Chof hoisa akuma. If it is bent, so look at picture number 53. Can you see your Korah goes across, and then there's like it bends outwards. You also notice that it bends out away from the mavi, that like in picture number 53. Or it bends upwards to go higher than 20, which has got to be within 20 amas from the ground. Or it dips low. Yeah, can you see the picture number 55? We look at it like as follows. If you were to take away this dip, this bend, and there isn't 3 tfachim, then you're okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, all of these things pass the Korah, because if that little bend, the problematic bend, is less than 3 tfachim, we just apply lovad, and therefore we can ignore it. Sorry, wrong one. V'imlav psula sivkot and samachvav. Hainu davka ba'ifin zeh shektzas Korah ha'akuma hu chutz l'shia hechshemavi. That's the part of the Korah is outside of the area of the mavi. Avalim hi kula b'toich ha'mavi kadin. But if the whole Korah was inside the mavi, it just bent a little bit in various places. Even in that situation, if the bend is more than 3 tfachim, kasher, that's okay. We look at it as if it was straight. Okay, so in other words, if there is bends on this Korah, if it's less than 3 tvachim, it's not a problem. But if the actual Korah is within the airspace of the mavui, then a bigger bend is not going to be a problem. We look at it as if conceptually it is straight. Okay.